But how did I do it? I lived and breathed the system for probably a month. Not just like studied it, but was configuring classes on the system at like 2 a.m. because this issue and this business is predicated on these people. So you have to serve them and you have to do what's right. So you just get shit done. Like,
pole dancers, start your engines. It's time for another episode of the Pole Position Podcast with your host, Beastie.
Okay, so we are here with Jenn, who is the owner of Revel Room Studios in San Jose. We're so excited to have her. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're gonna hear all about how you have navigated turning pole into a career and how you manage it along with your full-time job. And you've recently opened a second location, which is mind-blowing, especially in the Bay Area. So we want to hear all about that journey. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, you were like one of the first people that I thought of.
Yeah.
So I was like, ooh, like Jenn does it all.
Oh no.
How does she do it? And like you said, you're like a self-proclaimed get shit done. And I love that attitude. And it's such a powerful attitude to have when you want to accomplish a lot of things and have all of these big goals and aspirations. And I want to hear all about that mindset today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so can you tell me what's your muggle job? What do you do?
Okay, so if you look me up on LinkedIn, I'm a consultant. So I work for a consulting firm here in the Bay Area. And basically what that means is I work with a bunch of different tech clients. We do like large scale implementations, and I will either help them manage those implementations from start to finish or find ways to kind of make those implementations more efficient. I work a lot with engineering teams, program managers, product managers, just kind of that end-to-end life cycle.
What is your work schedule like? That sounds you have to be on and working with people pretty closely.
Yeah, so typically I'll work with a lot of different teams depending on time zones and stuff in the morning. And luckily I work remote, and so I'm able to kind of be at home and at my desk and kind of roll out of bed and just hop onto my laptop. But I start generally in the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock, going through all my meetings and working with different teams. And thankfully, it's not like crazy, so I'll be able to end around 3:30, 4 o'clock.
That's good. How long have you been with them?
With this company, almost about 5 years, but in a consulting capacity, I've worked at like many other companies. I've been consulting for, I would say, around 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, how old are you? Am I allowed to ask that?
Yeah, sure. I'm 31.
Wow, you're just like a professional from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right out the gate, you were born and you're like, let's go.
Well, I say 15 years because I actually started doing a lot of different projects that had me in a consulting capacity starting in high school. So like traveling internationally and working with student groups and like leading conferences and like leadership forums and all that stuff at a really, really young age. So from like a professional standpoint, like 10 years of work, but outside of that, in a professional, like other capacity, yeah.
Are you from the Bay Area? Did you go to school here?
Born and raised San Jose.
Where did you go to school?
Santa Teresa High School in South San Jose.
Nice. Yeah, I know exactly where that's
Do you
at.
really?
Yeah.
No way. That's awesome.
I don't know why. I work here, but yeah, we always film around that area too.
Cool.
So like Santa Teresa County Park is really cool.
Nice.
So also Kaiser is right there, and that's always been like my go-to.
Yeah.
Like that's where my insurance is. So
Yeah.
that's cool. So then, how long have you been pole dancing for? Like, tell me your pole origin story.
Yeah. So I've been pole dancing this December will be, I think, 10 years. So I started in 2014 and started with kind of just the curiosity of it. So I found this super amateur poler who was teaching out of her living room. Didn't really have like teaching experience or like much pole experience, but for me, like it was like, oh great, I can just try it out. Loved it, loved how challenging it was, just kind of grew in that space for a few years. And then felt like the studio that I was at wasn't necessarily the culture that I wanted to be in. And so I decided to explore other studios, went to studios like Inspo, Twirly, Ultimate, But at the end of the day, they were just so far away. Like I would find myself waiting at work in Mountain View until 7 o'clock to take inspiration classes, or driving at like 7:30 in the morning to twirly or things like that. And it was just so rough that I decided to, start to pursue opening up my own studio in this area. And one thing just led to another, and here we are.
And now you have 2 studios.
Yeah, 2 studios, yeah.
That's crazy. Also, I don't know that many Bay Area studios that have a 7:30 a.m. class, or even like an 8 a.m.
Twirly used to have 8:30 a.m. Saturday morning classes.
Yeah.
And so we, as a group of friends, we would wake up at 7:30, meet at someone's house. One person would drive, the rest of us would keep sleeping in the car just so we can take class at Twirly at 8:30.
You do what you have to do, I guess. That's cool. I was like similar, where I started, I initially started with like a Groupon for this like intro to pole class at another Bay Area studio, and it didn't click.
Yeah.
But then I got another Groupon that was for pole privates with a stripper where she would literally just put up her X pole in the middle of this very small dance studio in Willow Glen, and it just like from there, once it was a one-on-one, it really helped me excel and then click, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to keep going with this.
Nice.
So those are like the best. Like starting like just in a small,
it feels like Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
We gotta talk about it, we can't talk about it.
Like it was just like a weird, like it wasn't like, oh, I started my first class was at Revel Room Studios, right? It was a little bit different 10 years ago compared to now. So that's cool. So tell me about the opening of the first Revel Room location.
Yeah, so we opened in Milpitas, California, which is very close to San Jose, March 2nd of 2020. And 15 days later, we had to close down. But I'll just rewind a little bit. So I was kind of toying around with this idea of like opening my own studio. And so I was, working during the days, and during like downtimes between meetings and stuff, I'd be just like searching up real estate, searching up how to get, your business license, what are the zoning requirements, drafting out like budgets, doing pricing analysis, all that stuff, just kind of building out your entire business plan and business strategy. And then like I would go see spaces, and I feel like these things happen where you go see a space and it doesn't work out, you go see a space and it doesn't work out, and then at some point one of them does work out, and then you have to make a move. And if you don't make a move, you'll be back at square one and have to do this again for another year. So I found myself in a position where I had to make a move on a space, otherwise it would disappear. So I just went for it, and then we basically went through construction for a few months, stood up the space. Pandemic happened. We had to close down for basically a year. And like that's like one of the biggest first struggles that we had to go through as a business. And I feel like a struggle is an understatement.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what a struggle.
Yeah, it was like completely life-changing. I mean, people say like, you don't want to dump everything into the business in case something happens, all that stuff, or they're on the other side where they're like, you're young, you can fail, it's okay. But when the pandemic happened, like we were scared shitless, and we were basically bleeding out of our pockets. And so had to go through a lot of, stuff to recoup all of that. But we had that studio, and then once we were able to reopen, people just came streaming in. And I think it was due to a lot of commercialization of pole. Like you started to see J-Lo, Super Bowl pole performances. You see pole dancers all over in music videos and things like
Kelly
that.
Vaughn.
Yeah. And so it started to get more popular. We started to get people through the door, like tons of students filling up classes, to the point where people had to wake up at 12:01 to sign up for a class 30 days in advance, like crazy. So then we got to the point where we had to look at capacity issues and open up the second studio. And so we went down that road again.
That's so good though, to go from pandemic struggles to literally the opposite problem.
Yeah.
Like the way that you guys were able to thrive.
Yeah.
like what a blessing that is to have. And it just makes me so excited and happy for you to hear that. So you mentioned that it was a lot of the culture of the other studios that you're like, no, like I just want to create my own culture and my own space. So I want to hear like more about how you do that. I feel like your revelers are so committed to pole, and what do you do to breed this culture?
Yeah. I mean, our number one thing, and we always say at Revel Room, is be a good human. It's our Wi-Fi password, by the way.
So everybody knows.
Be a good human. But I think the foundation of it is that when you come into a space like this, where you have a lot of different people that you don't know, we are nearly naked, failing in front of each other, doing weird ass shit, you know, shaking our asses and everything.
In really weird positions.
Yeah, you can't really, like, you have to come with a clean slate and no judgment, no anything, right? Just like wipe your feet at the door, come in and be present and have fun. And so starting off with that foundation is really critical. So I kind of instilled those core values in everyone, and primarily the instructors. When you kind of think of your business structure, you have you as kind of the quote leader, and then you have instructors that kind of inseminate these core values throughout your entire business. And then below them, you have students who have kind of that personality, that heart in the studio that can also do the same fruitful work that you want instructors to do as well. So kind of instilling those values in those key players first, and that builds kind of the entire community and reverberates throughout each person.
It becomes an influence and an inspiration to the students that can then continue to spread throughout, even to new students too.
Yeah.
I also, a big key word that you used there was that you called yourself a leader and not a manager. And I yes. Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be more like managing is something that you do have to do, but when you're trying to develop a culture, like we need to think of ourselves and act as leaders. And that's how you get that to trickle down.
Yeah, and I think there's also a distinction when people open a business, they often start with themselves, but at the end of the day, you are selling your brand, not yourself. So you want people to come to the studio, not because of you, but because of the space that you've created, the people that are in the space. So it's great that you might be a really good instructor, but if everybody else on your team is not great or doesn't provide a similar experience, your business is shit. So, yeah.
And I think that that's exactly how you were able to acquire like the blessings of like, we literally have to expand because everybody wants to be a part of this community, and that's super special. What were some of the struggles that you guys faced when opening up the second studio? And specifically, like, how did you find time? How did you make that happen?
So for the second studio, when we finished construction, I then went to the next milestone where, okay, now we have to basically open up a booking system for the new studio. So we were going with the same booking system, but in order to have two locations, they basically charged us up the ass, and it was like paying a mortgage every month. And I was like, we can't possibly afford this just for opening a second space. So in the midst, I thought I was just gonna finish construction and open, but then I had to delay myself an entire month because I had to do an entire system migration to a completely different booking system. So I had to go through the entire process of like writing down like product requirements and doing the whole integration and data migration and setting up the booking system, and then having to like market it, make sure everybody's accounts were the same and all that stuff. So that was a huge issue that we had, and there were so many like mess ups that happened when we cut over from migration that like residual work had to be done to kind of mitigate all those errors that happened. But how did I do it? I lived and breathed the system for probably a month. Not just like studied it, but was configuring classes on the system at like 2 a.m. Or answering people's emails at 2 a.m. because something had happened and I felt bad about it, and so I had to, make it up to them. But you don't sleep, right? Because this issue and this business is predicated on these people. So you have to serve them and you have to do what's right. So you just get shit done. like I don't really know how else to say it, but when this is your life and you eat, sleep, and breathe it, you have to just get it done.
Yeah. How did you manage the days with little sleep where you're up at 2 a.m. but then up, or up till 2 a.m. and then waking up at 8:30 to get your muggle job done?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I mean, I think for sleep, you just make up for on the days where you don't have that much work. But I think for me, my brain powers my body. So if I'm telling myself that I have to get this done, my body just goes on autopilot and it just cranks. So I guess I'm one of those people who luckily, I can physically put myself through some of these things just because my brain is like, you have to do it. Sorry, you have no other option.
Do you think you've always been that way, or do you think it's because of pole that your body is able to be more resilient to these challenges?
No, I have always been this way.
Wow.
Yeah, pre-pole, I've been through some really critical, life-changing moments where my brain had to just keep functioning. My body was just being dragged along. And that's what I had to do to basically survive. So,
yeah. So what is a typical day in the life for you then, now that we're running 2 studios here and then you still have your job, you're teaching here, you're and so cute, you guys scheduled an instructor's outing, it looked like. That looks like so much fun. I want to talk to you more about that afterwards because I want to go.
Yeah.
It seems like you have it. It looks from the outside, it looks like you have it all figured out.
I hope so. I'm glad it looks that way. I like to think that I have it kind of figured out. I always try to be at least 5 steps ahead. But a typical day, during the days I'm working my muggle job. But in between meetings, if I have time, then I'll hop onto our booking system or emails to start to answer emails and things like that. With regard to managing the studio, once you get it up and running, it kind of functions, and then you just have to do any interventions that are needed. So for the most part now, it's not too bad unless something big happens. So the day is pretty standard, and then during the weeks, I try to pop into both studios if I'm not teaching at it during a certain day. So if I'm teaching at Milpitas, I can check on things in Milpitas, but then I'll head over to San Jose at night to scope things out, or during the day. And I'm always finding myself with big boxes of things like toilet paper and cleaning supplies, shuttling them back and forth between the studios and restocking things. So that's typically what I'll do between work ending and classes starting. And then once classes start, I'm in full teacher mode. My phone is off. I'm teaching class. And at the end of the day, I'm always looking through the schedule to see attendance, fill rates, checking to see, why this class was low or these students didn't show up or anything like that. So just kind of doing that back end stuff at night.
How do you schedule time for your own personal training?
So every week, once a day, I train for myself, and I allocate that, space out time. I put state calendar on my work meetings. On my work calendar, I say I have a meeting from 4 to 5. It's not a meeting. I am at the pole studio and I am training. So I train with Devin. So we kind of hold each other accountable, which is super helpful. So I train with her once a week, and then if I'm able to, then I also take at least 1 class a week as well.
Do people at work know that you are a pole dancer and have these studios?
Yes, for the most part they do. I usually tell them straight up just because I want them to know my capacity. I also set very strict kind of guidelines for them. I will not take a meeting after 6 p.m. Or for consulting companies, there's a lot of off work hour meetings or gatherings. So
and you mentioned international or other different time zones of people that you're working with too. So that requires a little bit of flexibility on your end.
Yeah, but I will always, set the standard for them that, on certain days I can't go to these events after a certain time. So for the most part, this company has respected those boundaries. I think if you had asked me this other companies ago where I was, traveling to the Philippines every other month for like 2 weeks, I would have said that no, I would not have been able to open up a studio. But luckily, I think the reason why I've been with this company for so long is because they allow me to have that work-life balance.
Were those boundaries hard for you to set in the beginning? Like what advice would you give to somebody that might struggle with respecting even their own boundaries and setting those?
Yeah, I think from a work perspective, if you have enough standing at your company, you can set those boundaries.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're brand new, you have to do what your employer kind of like tells you to do. So you kind of have to walk that line a little bit, play the politics. But at some point, once you have standing and people trust you and they know you'll get your work done, then things become more relaxed and then you can start to set those boundaries.
Yeah. Do you have rest days?
Rest from physical pole or
I guess I want to hear about it all. Yeah, rest from pole. What does your cross training look like? And do you have a day where you physically like maybe don't do anything, or other recovery means outside of cross training, like massage work, body work?
Yeah. So I try to schedule a massage at least every 2 weeks or every week if possible.
Yeah.
And so that's like body work for me. I have days that I purposefully don't teach, and even if someone is a sub, I won't take on that class for them because I spend it with my mom, my family. And then I have days where I'm not physically teaching, but I'm still like monitoring the business or like doing some analysis, running reports for the business. But I'm not physically at the studio or physically doing pole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're really close with your family. They're all local.
Yes, they're all
local. Do you have a partner?
I do. Yes, he is actually also the business partner.
Oh, nice. So you guys are able. How does that? How is navigating being a business partner with your partner, like with your person?
Yeah,
person that you had to go to bed with.
Yeah. They always say like, don't go to business like with your family or with like your significant other. In our aspect, I feel like it made our relationship a million times better because it forced us to communicate and it forced us to talk about things we were uncomfortable with for the sake of the business. So I feel like our relationship actually grew because of that. And now we're kind of at that point where we talk about the business so much that we have to remind ourselves to shut up and not talk about the business, especially when we're on like vacations. But we set boundaries for each other as well. So if I'm teaching on the weekends, he's golfing on the weekends. So we have our own time to do our own things. And we kind of understand that we have our lives to spend with each other. And this business is not going to span our entire lives. So let's do what we can do now for the business, get it to a state where we feel comfortable, we're happy about it. And if we need to, dip, then we'll dip and go live our lives. Yeah. So we've come to that understanding.
That's a really powerful message there too. A lot of people are like in such a rush to like, I don't know, get with their person and do all these things, and to each their own, that's totally fine. But like in the grand scheme of looking at your literally life till the very end, and you're only 31, like you have so much time to spend with each other.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to live your life as you, not as each other just so soon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has he ever taken a pole dancing class?
Not a class. He'll tell you that he went upside down, but horrible form. I did not teach him that.
Do you have a pole at home? Does he have to play on it?
No. We won't do any pole at home because we have 2 studios with plenty of poles that we can just hop over into.
Right?
So no poles at home.
How have you noticed any ways that pole has influenced your work life? Being like a leader here, has that carried over into your work life?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't separate the two, right? Like it's part of your identity. So yeah, I definitely see some crossover, mostly in the sense of leading people. I think at my Muggle job, I get a lot of questions and people asking me to coach individuals because they see that I have really good like interpersonal skills. And I think that's reflective of the studio as well. Because for me, my instructors are my gold, right? It's so hard to find good instructors. So when I find good instructors, or I train instructors to be good instructors, I value them so much. And I try as much as possible to make them happy, keep them coming back and wanting to teach, and just giving them a space where they can feel like they can just have as their own. And I think that resonates in the workplace as well. Like, you want to have the patience and manage your person for them, not for you, right? So it's kind of being that like selfless individual where you may not win here, but having them overall is going to win you in general.
Have there been any misconceptions from people at work about your pole dancing career?
I think nowadays it's more like they think that I'm just coming into space and teaching a class and then leaving for the night. They don't understand the time commitment around it. So when I tell people that, oh, you know, I teach pole and I own a studio, they're like, oh, okay, cool. You just teach a class, like a dance class, like a children's dance class or something. But when I kind of go through some of the nuances about the business and managing staff and all that stuff and keeping people happy, then you start to see all the things add up, and then they start to understand that it's not just clocking in and clocking out, but it's the life around it that takes up all the time.
Right. So how do you have any like big future goals to make pole your one and only career?
Hell no. Girl, we live in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
There is no way you could survive off of owning 1, 2, maybe even 3, 4 pole studios. There's just no way.
There's no way.
In addition to like the financial component of it, I love my day job. It allows me to use a part of my brain that I can't really use fully elsewhere. So I will probably never leave my day job, plus health insurance and just interacting with a different type of people. So it allows you to kind of flex in different areas.
Yes.
So I will never leave it primarily for money.
Yeah.
Like Silicon Valley tech pay is great, and no pole studio can probably take over that. And I also just think like, if you can do both, why not?
Yeah.
Right? Like what's stopping you from just going to your fullest potential? Yeah.
When did you realize that you had the capacity to run your own studio?
I don't think there's a moment of realization. I think that in the process of opening up a studio, you start with one thing, and then another thing gets added to your plate, and then one more. And then pretty soon you realize that you're balancing all of these things and you're still alive. So it'll just keep going. There's no moment of realization. You just kind of keep going, and then you realize that, okay, if I need to do this, then I'll make it work.
Right. You're basically saying like, it might be scary at first, and then once you kind of realize that you're in it and you're doing it, and you look back and you're like, oh yeah, like that wasn't that bad.
I wouldn't even say it's scary at first. I think it's scary always, because you're always like checking things, right? But I think it's like, yeah, like you're saying, like you do so much that at some point you look back and you're like, oh, I'm already doing this. I'll just keep doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you always really busy even before you started pole dancing? Like, were you just like a nonstop child? Like, did your mom have to wrangle you in? Like, I'm getting those vibes.
I think I'm nonstop in the sense that I wasn't like a bad kid, but I was nonstop studious, nonstop extracurricular, nonstop doing things that were always more like beneficial for me. Like I wasn't creating havoc, but I just had a lot on my plate. So I think I just kind of got to the adulthood where if I didn't have something on my plate, something's wrong.
Yeah, it's hard to just sit still.
Yes.
It's really uncomfortable, actually.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Like me sitting still is reorganizing my entire kitchen.
Yeah.
Or folding laundry, because it's a mindless task, but I'm still doing something.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I make my to-do lists and there's just like a task that I'm not ready to get to yet mentally, but I'm like, whatever, like I'm doing laundry, I'm still checking things off my list, like, and it still makes me feel like I'm being productive.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then I'm like, no, I can still check this off. Like I keep a physical like to-do list. Yeah. Like I literally write things down. It gets reprioritized multiple times a day.
Yeah, I mean, I used to operate more off of this, but nowadays not so much. But I have a clipboard that has been with me for like almost 10 years. And it's survived me through multiple different countries and tons of to-do lists that I've also reprioritized and checked off and things like that. But when I bring my clipboard out, everyone knows, oh shit, Jenn's in boss mode. She's getting ready. Don't get in her way. Like she's doing work. Yeah.
Is it literally just a clipboard, or is it one of those aluminum ones that is like stores things?
It's not even aluminum. It's like the wooden kind, like the old school kind. And I'm so shocked that it's still, alive and working. But yeah, it's a wooden kind, and it was probably cost me like 79 cents 10 years ago. Yeah.
That's amazing. What other tools do you use then to help you get things done?
Yeah, I use spreadsheets a lot. So Google Trixes.
Trixes?
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of this. I was like, oh, you're going to say sheets, forms.
There's
so many.
So if you're a Googler, as in if you work at Google, you'll call it Trixes. So that's what Googlers call it. So I'm used to that terminology. But it used to be called Matrix before they renamed it Spreadsheet. And so that's why they call it Trixes at Google. But I use that a lot to organize things and also do just like analyses and understanding like what's happening or checklists. And then in general, just like notes on my phone or calendar. I cannot live without my calendar, even me and my significant other. If I'm interviewing with you, it says interview with Tanya, and everyone's invited so they know what's going on. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. I feel like I write things down on my calendar and I still forget about it. So like first thing in the morning or like before I go to bed at night, I always look at like my work calendar and my personal calendar. They're both very different in two different locations. One's digital, one's physical. I look what's coming up the next day, and then same thing in the morning. Like what do I have going on today? Like looking at what. It is amazing what can change when you do all of these things in the hours that you're sleeping.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like, oh, weather change, that's going to change my plans for today.
Yeah, so, definitely.
What advice would you give to a pole dancer that maybe wants to make more of a career out of pole dancing or start taking it more seriously and put more time into dedicating to their pole life?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll give this advice to anybody who is starting a business, right? And I've given this before to many people that I've like mentored, is that you have to be scared of failing. If you are not scared of failing, you're giving yourself the option and the space to fail. And it's pretty likely that you will. So if you want to succeed, you have to be scared of failing. It's gonna be hard. No one says, nothing's ever easy, right? Unless you just get it handed to you, but still you have to work. It's going to be hard, but as long as you are scared of failing and tell yourself that you have to succeed, you'll get somewhere.
How does that quote go? Something about it being worth fighting for?
Yeah.
What is that quote?
I don't know, but I know what you're talking about. I've seen it before.
That's so true. The things that are worth it in life are you have to fight for them. Otherwise, it's not worth it. It's essentially the essence of that quote. What else are you working on for you right now? Well,
I'm getting married.
When?
Next year.
How exciting! Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
How long have you guys been together?
10 years.
Cute. No, that was the same way. I just got married in November. We've been together for 10 years.
Yeah. Congratulations. You'll have to pick your brain on some wedding stuff. Because I'm a newbie for that.
Oh, we had a really, really intimate, small. We actually eloped in Vegas.
Oh, nice.
And then did a very intimate reception beforehand. So,
cool. That sounds so cool.
Kept it chill.
Sometimes I wish I did choose to elope, but we didn't. But alas, we're here. So we've been together for 10 years. We're getting married next year. So I'm also planning that. But to me, that's fun because you get to plan something that is like low risk, high reward, and everyone's just having a good time. It's not like planning a business, right, where it's like low reward, high risk.
Yeah.
And then other than that, right now, nothing really else is on my plate, which is great. But also at the same time, like we were mentioning, I'm like, should something be on my plate? Should I be doing something? I don't know how to take like a day off. But yeah, so right now I'm just planning a wedding.
Have you picked out your dresses or anything yet?
So we're actually doing a destination wedding in Vietnam. We're both Vietnamese. And so I'm getting my dress custom made there. So I went there last year, drew it all out and everything, chose my fabrics, and I'll be going there again at the end of the year to do fittings and all that stuff.
Do you know what color your dress is going to be? Are you allowed to say that publicly?
I mean, sure, it's my dress, right? It's my wedding, right?
I was really, because like I didn't get married in a white dress, and I was like, nope, I'm not telling anybody. Only like a few people knew anything about my dress. I wanted to gatekeep it.
What? Now I need pictures after this.
It was red. It happened.
Ooh,
but yeah.
Yes, amazing. Oh my gosh, I had a friend who got married in a black dress, and she looked so stunning. I was like, I kind of regret not getting like a black dress, but mine's not totally white because I feel like I don't look good in like white. Yeah, so mine's more like a beige pink color.
Cute.
Yeah, but very glitzy. I don't see myself as like clean, traditional, petite, I'm like shiny fabric. Yes, I want to make an entrance, high slit, show off my muscles.
Hell yeah. I love that.
Yes.
Do you think that you guys will have aerialists or anything performing at your wedding?
I thought about that too, and because it's overseas, I feel like it's going to be hard to find not just a venue, but people in general.
How is the pole community in Vietnam?
Surprisingly huge.
Yeah.
In Saigon, which is in the south, they have more pole studios than California in general.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so many. Like you look up pole studios and you'll find maybe like 5 within like a 15-minute driving distance. Like it's crazy.
Did you get to train at any of those studios?
I did. I taught workshops as well.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's right. I think I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool because to me, I was like, oh, like no one's going to want to workshop. Like I'm a nobody, right? Like
No,
I'm just a regular person. I'm a regular person who likes to pole dance and I'm decent.
Humble.
So I'm like, no one's going to want to do a workshop, but heck, I'll just do it for free, for funsies, whatever. So I reached out to people and they're like, yeah, you do static pole. Yes, we want a workshop. Because apparently over there, they do a lot of spin, but no one does static. And I love static. So
same.
Like, yeah, so there is like a niche there for people to do workshops, even if you're a nobody like me.
You're totally not a nobody. You are Jenn Phan. You're a badass.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Do you have any final advice or words of wisdom for those that might be struggling to get everything done? People that might be, let's call it, out of balance.
Yeah. Okay, so this might not sound great, but
good leading.
I just want to be honest with people, right? Like, there's a very specific personality type and work ethic type that can do things like this, right? And you know this too. Like, there are people like us who can get things done like this. So, if you are like us, great. This will probably feel second nature to you. Mm-hmm. If you're not like us, it's gonna be hard. It's not impossible, but you're gonna go through way more struggles than other people and find yourselves hitting rock bottom multiple times. Mm-hmm. And then it's just a matter of how much grit do you have? Like, how much are you willing to bear through this to keep going? And if you give up, that's okay too. Like, you can give up, right? Again, like if you fear failing, then that's kind of up to you. But I think like it's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think if you know who you are and you know what working style you have, what kind of personality that you have, if you're able to do this, how gritty you are, then you know what capacity you have to do things like this. But if you're like, kind of like, oh yeah, I guess guess I can open a business. Like the wind's blowing that way, might as well try. Things are going to come in your direction that are not going to be great. And you have to kind of make the decision on whether you want to face it head on or run away. So I know it sounds not very like uplifting.
I think that it does though. Okay, maybe not uplifting, but it is very real. And I totally agree with you. And I think that, like you mentioned, people that get it, like will get it, right? And I think people ask me like, how do you do all of that? Or when I'm like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And they're like, can you do that, Ton? And I'm like, yeah. And the key is that like, you have to want it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think that for those that want things, it like just they'll find a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
I frequently think of parents when I think of people that do really difficult tasks and really have to like navigate an insane schedule. And part of it is like, oh, like, do you want kids? And I'm like, no, like I don't. And like, it's like a lot of work. And they're like, yeah, but like, if you really wanted it though, like you would make it happen. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm doing everything else that I'm doing. Like it's literally like the same. We're both doing insane things at a different capacity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. Like parents, you have to make it work, right? You have this child that depends on you. You just have to make it work. You cannot fail. Yep. And that's the exact same mentality that you have to apply to a business.
Yep. This business is your baby. You have two businesses that are your baby.
Yeah. You know? I feel like people say that, but they don't really like see how much of a baby it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us all of this great insight, and I wish you nothing but the best. Congratulations on your engagement and getting married, opening your second studio. I can't wait to watch you for the next 5 years.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you doing this as well, because I feel like a lot of people can benefit from hearing some of these stories, and it'll help steer them in the right direction, whether it's towards it or away from it, but it'll give them some insight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great job, Tanya. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yay, thank you.